Subscribe, like, and share. Hello everyone and welcome back to another live stream with me, Gisela K. This is Grizzly True Crime, and today we're going to watch day 3 of the Joseph Ferlazzo trial. If you don't know much about this case yet, I would highly recommend either quickly reading what's in the description box, or if you watch day 2 of the trial, right at the beginning I did a whole presentation. We went over the timeline, some details we hadn't heard because the opening statements were just a little bit chopped on the feed we were using. And so we went over all of that again. I showed pictures and all sorts of things. So day 2, right at the beginning, and you'll be all caught up in no time. It was like 15 minutes, right, of a recap. Okay, so are we ready? Are we ready to watch? First, I do want to tell you, thank you so much to the Grizzly, I always keep my sources anonymous, who sent me screenshots of a Burlington Free Press article, because Burlington Free Press is behind a paywall and there's just nothing you could do about it. And I don't want to sign up for one article. So anyway, what they said was, that was almost me, murder suspect Ferlazzo previously accused of assault by another Vermont woman. A New Hampshire man accused of killing his wife had been violent in the past, according to a Stockborough, Vermont woman who went on several dates with him, she said. Wow. It says, hold on one second. Brooke Friend, 25, says Joseph Ferlazzo, 41, that was obviously in 2021, drugged her, SA'd her, and threatened to kill her at his Richmond, Vermont home in 2018. She reported the incident to police, but prosecutors declined to file a case, believing there was not enough evidence. And so she sought a permanent restraining order against him, which would have prevented further contact and placed restrictions on Ferlazzo's ability to buy a gun. But a Chittenden County Family Court judge denied it. There was a huge red flag. This guy, allegedly, drugged her, SA'd her, and threatened to kill her. Oh my goodness. Okay, so, all right, now we're ready for the trial day, aren't we? I just wanted to share that with you, because yesterday we were talking about that. Like, where are the ex-girlfriends? Like, what do they say? Hold on, we quickly boost this for you. Boost the sound. All right, and we make it full screen. And here we go. Okay, and we're back. Here he comes. Right? Tracy says shame. If only they took that victim more seriously, right? Okay, so there's no sound yet. There he is.
We're here in the matter of State versus Joseph Ferlazzo Jr., 21 CR 8967. Mr. Ferlazzo is present with his attorneys, Ms. Jantz and Ms.
For those who are just joining today, this is the guy on trial for his 22-year-old wife's murder. They'd only been married for 1 year. They were on their 1-year wedding anniversary trip. They were going from New Hampshire to Vermont, so they were in Vermont in his converted, like, minibus camper. And yesterday we saw some horrifying evidence of what he did. And he's confessed to the police. It's just that he's pleaded not guilty, so here we are at the trial. Okay, so this case took place in Vermont in 2021. October 2021, the weekend of the 15th and 16th of October. And what he did was he said that he jumped on her, put a throw pillow over her head, and shot her twice. Then he dismembered her. But he left out that he also stabbed her deceased body 18 times, front and back. So he would have had to turn her over. That is just so scary. And they found 8 garbage bags in the bathroom area of that camper van with her remains in it. And they showed those garbage bags yesterday, but thankfully nothing graphic.
Johnson, the state's present, and Ms. George and Ms. Adams. We're here. We're going to bring in the jury in a moment. I've heard from the parties there are no issues to discuss before we bring in the jury, so we're in the process of doing so.
Okay, let's go forward a bit.
All right.
By the way, I think at this point we are all well aware that the acoustics, as they say in the courtroom, sucks. It's really not great audio. I boosted it for us. However, I am so grateful that they've got cameras in the courtroom, that we are able to watch this trial together. And well done to all of those that are enduring this with me, with the audio. Because some people are leaving comments like, I can't do this anymore. Come on, man, you can do it. You're a Grizzly. We're watching this together. We want to see justice for Emily. Okay, here we go.
Please be seated. All 16 members of the jury are present. I first want to thank you all for being so prompt. I understand everybody was here no later than 8:25, and it's really helpful, and I'm glad we're able to start relatively on time. I'll ask you the usual questions. Did anyone learn anything about this case since last departing court yesterday? From any outside source? Did anybody discuss this case with anybody since we were last together yesterday? And again, is there any reason any one of you cannot be a fair and impartial juror in this case moving forward? As to all three questions, I'm seeing only shakes of the head no. We will resume now in the matter of State versus Joseph Ferlazzo Jr. Is the state ready to call its next witness?
We are, Your Honor. The state would call Detective Sergeant Aron McNeal.
Raise your right hand, please. Solemnly affirm that the evidence you shall give relative to the cause now under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury. I do. Thank you.
Okay, we got our first witness of the day. Marie says, gee, how do you confess and then plead not guilty? I guess he wants to see what his chances are. Let's see what the jury says. Maybe they think he's not guilty. Maybe they're going to believe his self-defense claim. I don't think so, but it seems like he thinks so. And we've seen this in cases, right? Ali Abulaban, Richard Allen in Delphi. Many cases where people have confessed to the police and later retracted, and then they go to trial. So here he is having his fair trial. Let's see what the jury decides. I think so far the evidence is overwhelming.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We are learning that the acoustics are not great in this room, so try to keep your voice up and speak into the mic so the back jurors can hear you.
Okay.
Can you start by just stating your name and spelling both your first and last name?
Yep. My name is Aron McNeal, and Aron is Aron, and last name is McNeal, which is McNeil.
Okay. And how are you employed?
I'm employed by the Vermont State Police.
Okay. And how long have you been with the Vermont State Police?
Just about 16 years.
Okay. So you were employed by them in October of 2021?
I was.
Okay. And what was your rank at the time?
In October of 2021, my rank was Detective Sergeant.
Okay. And what were your assignments?
My assignment is commander of our crime scene search team for the Major Crime Unit.
Okay. The jury heard from Amy Nolan yesterday. Is that the same? Is it the same role or assignment that she was doing in the
At that time, she was the assistant team commander for crime scene.
Okay, great. How long at that point had you been a member of the crime scene search team?
At that point, I was a member of the team for approximately 7 years.
Okay. And approximately how many major crime scene investigations have you participated in?
As of today, approximately 222 major crime scenes.
In mid-October of 2021, were you made aware of an investigation related to Emily Ferlazzo?
I was.
And what information were you initially provided?
Initially, I was advised that she was a missing person and that several vehicles had been seized as a result of the initial investigation. And at that point, crime scene was asked to process several vehicles.
Okay. And is that the point where you became involved?
It is.
And when did that initial involvement occur?
That would have been October 19th of 2021.
Okay. Did you, on October 19th, did you enter the van as part of that processing?
Not on the 19th.
Okay. And what task were you assigned then?
On October 19th, I was assigned to process a red Jeep that had been seized as a result of the initial investigation.
Okay. And what was the authority for entering that Jeep?
I was provided with a search warrant to process that Jeep.
Okay. Judge, the state moves to admit 92 through 103, I believe, with no objection.
Any objection?
No objection. Thank you.
92 through 103, you said?
Yes.
92 through 103 are admitted.
Detective, have you already reviewed all of these photos that we're about to go through?
I believe I have, yes.
Okay. So I'm going to start with States 92. Can you tell the jury what that is a photo of?
That was the Jeep that was processed on October 19th, 2021.
Okay. Before you started the search, did you verify that this was the Jeep
Yes,
the
I had a
warrant
copy.
was for?
I did. I had a copy of the warrant, and I made sure that the make, model, and the registration plate was the correct vehicle.
Okay. And what were you specifically searching the Jeep for?
The search specifically was related to any of the items listed that ordered us to search for inside of the Jeep, specifically cellular devices, possible human remains. There was a list of things that were listed on the warrant.
Okay. Any weapons?
So just to clarify, the reason they're now looking at this Jeep, there were four vehicles that we've heard of in this case. One is the camper bus, which we call the camper van, but it's more bus, okay? The camper bus. Then there's Joseph Ferlazzo's Ducati motorbike that he had parked at a friend's house, and he drove to New Hampshire with to go and get his Jeep. 3 is the Jeep that they just showed now. So he went to fetch his Jeep because he told police he wanted to drive into the woods to dispose of all those trash bags with Emily's remains in them, in the woods. Like the dumbass thought no one would find that either. Okay. And the 4th vehicle would be Spencer Lemon's vehicle, his friend, who he had asked, can you drive me to the van? Hey, can you give me a ride so I can go get my van? And then Spencer had left him there because he kicked him out of the car because he had confessed to murdering Emily, and so he called 911. Okay, so that's why they're showing us this Jeep Wrangler, in case they did a search warrant to see, well, what else was there. And they were obviously at that point as well, as we heard yesterday, looking for a knife because they realized, oh my goodness, he didn't just shoot her twice. He also stabbed her 18 times after she was deceased. So they're looking for weapons.
Yes.
Okay. And so at the time the search warrant was granted, had Emily's body not been located?
I was aware that likely human remains had been found in a van that was also being processed at the same time at the same facility, but I was not certain whose remains they were or for sure if they were human yet at that point.
Okay. What items of importance did you seize from the van? I'm sorry, from the Jeep.
From the Jeep, there was a Smith & Wesson brand knife inside of a sheath that I found inside the driver's door. And there was also a cellular telephone that was in the center console of the Jeep.
Oh my word. So they found a knife in the Jeep. Because yesterday they talked about they were looking in the van and the Jeep. They were going to look, well, now we need to look for a knife as well. So a Smith & Wesson knife and in its sheath in the Jeep and a cell phone, okay?
Show you what's been marked as States 93. Can you tell us what this is?
This is a photo of the cellular telephone that's in the center console prior to collection.
Okay. And States 94.
That's with the screen activated or the screen turned on is a picture that crime scene took of the phone that night.
Okay. I see part of a 2 up in the corner. Was this labeled as Jeep number 2?
It was.
Okay. Is there any other number associated with this piece of evidence?
There is. There could be several numbers, but I'm specifically aware that this is listed as item number 14 in our software database.
This happened, I think, once yesterday with Detective Nolan. Can you explain to the jury why one piece of evidence might have 2 numbers?
Sure.
Or multiple numbers?
So, State Police, we have a software database that keeps track of all evidence collected or all items collected by the State Police. It's called File on Queue. And File on Queue assigns a number and a barcode to every piece of evidence that we collect that's individualized. What happens for crime scene processing in cases like this, is there'll be several different portions of the scene. There may be an actual crime scene, there may be a vehicle, there's an autopsy, and at each of those events, the evidence number starts over at 1. So there may be the first item collected at the autopsy may be labeled, medical examiner item number 1. The first item in the Jeep will be Jeep number 1, and the van would be number 1. And then file on queue, when those items are put into the database under the same case number, it'll give it one mastered number. So it makes it easy so we can have one number assigned to that piece of evidence for reference purposes, but also I can reference it for days like today in court for juries like yourselves.
Okay, thank you. So this item, once it was put into the master list, was labeled item 14.
That is correct.
Okay, and that's the phone that you found in Mr. Ferlazzo's Jeep.
Yes.
Okay. I'll show you State 95. Can you tell us what that is?
States 95 is the registration card that was found inside of the Jeep, indicating that the Jeep was registered to a Joseph Ferlazzo. It also includes the registration plate and VIN number and other information.
Okay. And so is that further confirmation that this Jeep you were searching belonged to Mr. Ferlazzo?
Yes.
Okay. And was the iPhone that you located brought back to VSP for processing?
It was.
Okay. Was that the entirety of your involvement on October 19th?
Not entirely. After we processed the Jeep, I assisted Sergeant Nolan with some evidence packaging and also entering items into the software database.
Okay. And did you have further involvement in the case the next day on the 20th?
I did.
Okay. And how did that come about? What did you do on the 20th?
The crime scene team, we did not finish processing the van on the first night on the 19th. We wanted to return. We had more work to do on the day or on the next day during the 20th. Plus, we wanted to do more work during the daylight hours. So I returned to process the van to assist with processing the van on the 20th.
Okay. And when you arrived, was the van secured with evidence tape?
It was.
Okay. And so did you take that off in order to re-enter the van?
We did.
Okay. While continuing the search of the van, did you hear from Detective Nolan?
I did. She contacted me.
And where was she at the time she contacted you?
At the time she contacted me, she was at the medical examiner's office at the autopsy.
Okay. And did she ask you to search the van for something specific?
She did.
What did she tell you to search for?
She advised me that during autopsy, Emily's body was found to have numerous stab wounds. So she asked us to further look during processing for any sharp objects or knives inside of the van.
Okay.
I don't want to forget, so I'm going to say it now. So I went back to listen to Joseph's sister's testimony because you guys were pointing out that she had spoken about him being married before, and I'd missed that the first time. But she did, when the defense did their cross-examination, she said, she mentioned an ex-wife, that he had moved to Vermont with his ex-wife, and she couldn't quite recall which date that was. So that tattoo on his finger, I would assume, is like a ring tattoo, right? I would assume it's from his previous marriage. Man, I'd love to hear from his ex-wife. Tell us more, right? If anyone wants to email me, grizzlytruecrime@gmail.com. I keep all my sources anonymous.
I'll show you States 96. Can you just tell the jury what this is showing?
This is a photo taken by the crime scene team inside of the van that shows a block of knives.
Okay. And did you collect these knives?
We did.
Is this just a close-up, States 97, just a close-up of the same block?
It is.
States 98.
States 98 is a crime scene photo of item number 44 collected from the van itself.
Okay. And did you notice anything of interest on this knife?
I did. During the collection of several of these knives, we noticed that there's reddish-brown stains on the knives.
Okay.
Disclaimer for YouTube. This is for educational purposes only. We're watching a trial where this object may have been used, and that is why they're showing it so big on screen.
States 45.
States 45 is another knife taken out of the block from the van.
And if you, was a swab of the reddish brown stains on these knives collected?
There was.
Okay. And so on States 44, was that swab labeled as 44A, 44B?
It would have been, yes.
Yeah, okay. And then on 45, was that swab labeled as 45B?
It was.
States 100. Can you tell the jury what this is?
States 100 is an image of the knife blade with the reddish-brown stains I was speaking of.
Okay. And so this is an example of what you would have swabbed and sent to the lab.
Correct, yes.
States 46.
It's an additional knife from the knife block.
And so the swab from this knife would have been labeled 46B.
That is correct.
Just so we're clear, that was States 101, though?
Yes, Judge, thank you. States 102.
That would be crime scene item number 49 from the van.
And again, the swab then from this item would have been 49B.
That is correct.
And States 103.
States 103 is, again, crime scene number 50 from the van, which is a pair of scissors.
And the swab of a reddish-brown stain on these scissors would have been labeled as 50B.
That is correct.
Okay. And were all of these swabs sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab for testing?
They were.
Okay. I don't have any other questions, Judge.
Any questions?
Questions? Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Your Honor, the state calls Harry Jeppe.
Solemnly affirm that the evidence you shall give relative to the cause now under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pain and penalty.
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning. Can you please state your name and spell your last name, please?
My name is Harry Jeppe, Jeppe.
And Mr. Jeppe, how are you employed?
I am the Physical Comparison Unit Supervisor at the Vermont Forensic Laboratory. As such, I am a qualified firearm and toolmark examiner.
Yes, the accent, everyone. What accent is that, huh?
Where is the Vermont Forensic Laboratory located?
The Vermont Forensic Laboratory is located at 45 State Street in Waterbury, Vermont.
When did you start employment with the Vermont Forensic Laboratory?
On the 1st of April, 2004.
And have you been in the same role since you started 20 years ago?
No, I originally started as a firearm and toolmark examiner, and in 2011, I was promoted to the supervisory position.
Can you spell your first name?
Certainly, sir. Harry, Harry.
Thank you.
That's a South African right there. Gerda says he has to be South African, right? Recognize it immediately. Any Sapphirs in the house? Gerda's here. Liz was here. I'm a South African too. That's why. Just in case you're wondering, like, what is this lady going on about? I'm South African. I live in Switzerland now, but yeah, this is a South African guy. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Generally speaking, what do firearms examiners do?
We examine every item of evidence related to firearms. With other words, firearms, obviously, fired cartridge components, which include cartridge cases, fired bullets, unfired cartridges, firearms magazines. We also do tool marks, where we compare submitted tools to, for example, locks or padlocks or anything that was used, any implement that was used to break into a home, a screwdriver, for example, used to pry open a window, and so on. Those are all considered to be tool marks. We also do chemical distance determinations based on propellant residue, firearms propellant residue. We do serial number restorations. And yeah, that's pretty much covers it.
What's your education
Gerda says, broer, kry die donder in die tronk, which means, brother, get this a-hole into jail.
background?
I have a
Prison.
diploma in forensic or in policing from the Technikon of South Africa. I also have a Bachelor of Technology degree from the University of South Africa in policing. I have an advanced certificate in forensic criminalistics, which is a 2-year study program, which I did through the University of South Africa, and I majored in forensic ballistics. I also did a 3-year training program through the South African Police Service Forensic Ballistics Unit in Cape Town in South Africa.
This might be a hard question to answer, but how many comparisons would you estimate that you have made to determine whether a particular bullet or cartridge case was fired from a particular weapon?
Literally thousands. If we're not talking about cases, I've been doing this since 1998. And I have not only looked at my own cases, but I've also done technical reviews. We have a mandated system of technical review in our laboratory where every comparison that is performed by an analyst is then sort of technical reviewed or verified by a second analyst. So in that sense, I have literally looked at thousands.
Have you testified in Vermont courts in the past?
Yes, I have.
How many times?
More than 40 times.
Have you been previously qualified as an expert, as a subject matter expert?
Yes, I have.
And what's the expertise?
Firearm and toolmark examination.
Your Honor, the state would move to qualify Mr. Jeppe as an expert in firearms and toolmark examinations.
I have no objection, Judge.
It's necessary, but
It's not
in the law,
necessary, but I have no
so
objection.
Thank you.
It's not necessary. You could just say no. Yes, approved.
I'm going to ask you some questions about general testing procedures. Can you explain to the jury what forensic firearms identification is?
Sure. So a firearms examination, specifically as it relates to the case in question, involves a firearm that is examined to determine if it's in working condition. The firearm is then test fired. Those test standards which we generate in the laboratory, with other words, the cartridges that we fire in that firearm in the laboratory, we use those, or we consider those to be our known standards. With other words, those are, we can relate to the firearm because we know the base truth that those came from the firearm. Those we use for comparison purposes, and obviously anything else that's submitted, like in this case, for example, where we had cartridge cases and bullets submitted, we would take those cartridge cases and those bullets, and we would physically compare them to the known standards to determine if they were fired from the same firearm.
And what makes such an identification possible?
When you're looking at fire ignition components, those components will show striated markings or scratch marks, basically, which are the result of the components being in direct contact.
No. Why is the audio now out of sync, you see? With how he's speaking. Stop it. With his feet. You better not.
With any surface inside the firearm during the firing process. So any feature that is latent, whether it's present on the firearm but not necessarily visible through the naked eye, is transferred onto the fired components during the firing process. Obviously, when you discharge a firearm, there's a lot of energy that's generated, there's a lot of pressure, the pressure causes expansion of the cartridge case. That's basically what eventually projects the bullet through the barrel.
This is difficult, man. I'm going to refresh. We are 29 minutes behind the feed. I just want to see if it helps. If not, we're going to switch to another feed to see if that helps. It's very difficult to watch it like that. Wait.
IG headstand.
29 minutes behind the feed.
And the cartridge cases. By then looking at those scratch marks and the uniqueness of those scratch marks, we can determine, first of all, whether class characteristics are consistent, and secondly, whether individual characteristics are consistent between the fired components and the firearm.
Is this type of identification generally accepted as reliable in the field?
Yes, it is.
When a firearm is used, does it leave markings on a cartridge case?
Yes, it does.
What about the copper jacketing of a bullet?
The copper jacket on a bullet will be marked by the interior surface of the barrel of the firearm, yes.
And what about the lead core that's encapsulated in the copper jacket?
A lead core is generally not in contact with the firearm because it's encapsulated in the jacket, and therefore it is generally not of value for comparison purposes.
So you mentioned this already, but can you explain to the jury what class characteristics are?
Class characteristics are features that are predetermined during the manufacturing process. So the manufacturer decides how the different components of the firearm are going to relate to each other. With other words, the relative shape of the firing pin, for example, the relative shape of the aperture of the firing pin, with other words, where the firing pin protrudes inside the firearm. The location of different components on the firearm, like the ejector and the extractor on the firearm. Also, the machining method used by the manufacturer. Some firearms are manufactured using milling cutters. Some are used through, or are manufactured by using electrochemical methods. Some are hand finished with files, etc. So those are all determined by the manufacturer. When you're looking at a barrel, every barrel has a series of spiraling grooves cut into the barrel. Those grooves are essentially intended to cause the bullet to spin while it's traveling through the air. You want that gyrating motion basically to stabilize the bullet in flight. Those grooves are the width of those grooves, the direction of, or the orientation of the twist of the grooves. Those are all predetermined by the manufacturer. And they are standard not just to one firearm, but to every other firearm that's made to that same specification. Those are what we refer to as class characteristics.
And can you explain to a jury what you mean when you talk about individual characteristics?
Individual characteristics are those characteristics that are unique to a specific firearm. That uniqueness is normally found in wear and tear of tooling that's used to manufacture the firearm. Also, any wear and tear that the firearm sort of incurs, or as the firearm evolves through lack of cleaning or improper cleaning methods, corrosion, erosion. As the firearm's fired, the heat and gases generated by the cartridges inside the firearm also tend to cause a certain degree of corrosion, which add to the uniqueness of the firearm. So yes, those are features that are unique to that specific firearm and normally develop as the firearm is used.
So you talked about your process and getting a known standard. Can you explain to the jury what that looks like at the lab?
So in the laboratory, we have a stockpile of ammunition, different types of ammunition, different calibers, different configurations. When a firearm is submitted for comparison, we would literally take and standard in accordance with our procedure, we would start with 2 test-fired samples. We would take 2 cartridges from our collection or our stock of ammunition in the laboratory, mark those with the last 3 digits of the serial number of the firearm, and then proceed to discharge the firearm and basically test fire it into a bullet recovery trap, which is essentially just a large tank of water.
And then once you get the known standard, can you explain to the jury how you compare that? What tools you use to compare it?
So we use a comparison microscope to do a direct physical comparison between the fired item, or the test-fired item rather, and the unknown or the questioned item. A comparison microscope is essentially 2 stereo microscopes, which are connected through an optical bridge. This allows you to view both stages of the microscope at the same time. And you can basically, when you're looking through this microscope and you have the 2 items on the 2 stages, you're able to see the 2 items right next to each other. You're able to superimpose those items and view essentially all the relevant markings on the firearm, manipulate the different items in order to line up markings and to inspect if there's a visual correlation between different markings. And this is essentially how we do the comparison.
So in this case, were you asked to work on a case from the Vermont State Police involving the death of Emily Ferlazzo?
Yes, I did.
And what items did you receive from the Vermont State Police?
I received a 9mm caliber Glock Model 19 pistol with an aftermarket Silent Serco barrel with conventional rifling. I also received a Silent Serco silencer, which was compatible with the firearm. I received a bullet jacket, a fired bullet jacket. I received a bullet core, a fired bullet, and a magazine and several cartridges.
Your Honor, I now would ask the court to read stipulation number 9, which is State's Exhibit 124.
Any objections?
No objection, Judge.
This one's a long one. Stipulation number 9, members of the jury, the state and defendant, Joseph Ferlazzo, have agreed that you may find certain facts. It's called a stipulation. A partial projectile was collected from bag number 4 on October 20th, 2021 by Vermont State Police during Ferlazzo's autopsy at the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. This partial projectile was sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. This partial projectile was analyzed by Harry Jeppe at the Vermont Forensic Lab and was in the same condition at the time of the analysis as it was when it was collected from bag number 4 on October 20th, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 30/OCME number 4A. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A2. Chain of custody of the partial projectile is not being challenged. A Glock 19 firearm was collected on October 19th, 2021 by the Vermont State Police during a search of the camper pursuant to a valid search warrant. The firearm was sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. This firearm was analyzed by Harry Jeppe at the Vermont Forensic Lab and was in the same condition at the time of the analysis as it was when collected from the camper during the search on October 19th, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 48/CSST, ban number 11. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A3. Chain of custody of the Glock 19 firearm is not being challenged. A magazine and 10 rounds of ammunition were collected on October 19th, 2021 by Vermont State Police during a search of the camper pursuant to a valid search warrant. The magazine and ammunition were sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. The magazine and ammunition were analyzed by Harry Jeppe at the Vermont Forensic Lab and was in the same condition at the time of the analysis as it was when collected from the camper during the search on October 19th, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 53/CSST, ban number 11A. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A5. Chain of custody of the magazine and ammunition is not being challenged. A projectile was collected from inside a large pillow, parentheses, in the pillowcase, end of parentheses, from bag number 2 on October 20th, 2021, by the Vermont State Police during Emily Palazzo's autopsy at the office of the Chief Medical Examiner. This projectile was sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. This projectile was analyzed by Harry Jeppe at the Vermont Forensic Lab and was in the same condition at the time of the analysis as it was when it was collected from bag number 2 on October 20th, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 61/OCME number 2A. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A7. Chain of custody of the projectile is not being challenged. A projectile was collected from inside a large pillow, parentheses, in the pillow, end of parentheses, from bag number 2 on October 20th, 2021, by Vermont State Police during Emily Palazzo's autopsy at the office of the Chief Medical Examiner. This projectile was sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. This projectile was analyzed by Harry Jeppe at the Vermont Forensic Lab and was in the same condition at the time of the analysis as it was when it was collected from bag number 2 on October 20th, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 62/OCME number 2B. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A8. Chain of custody of the projectile is not being challenged. A cartridge casing was collected from bag number 2 on October 20th, 2021 by Vermont State Police during Emily Palazzo's autopsy at the office of the Chief Medical Examiner. This cartridge casing was sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. This cartridge casing was analyzed by Harry Jeppe at the Vermont Forensic Lab and was in the same condition at the time of the analysis as it was when it was collected from bag number 2 on October 20th, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 63/OCME number 2C. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A9. Chain of custody of the cartridge casing is not being challenged. A silencer was collected on October 19th, 2021 by the Vermont State Police during a search of the camper pursuant to a valid search warrant. The silencer was sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. The silencer was analyzed by Harry Jeppe at the Vermont Forensic Lab and was in the same condition at the time of the analysis as it was when collected from the camper during the search on October 19th, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 85/CSST, ban number 22. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number 811. Chain of custody of the silencer is not being challenged. As with any evidence in this trial, you must decide what rate you will give this stipulation that State's Exhibit 124 is admitted in evidence.
Thank you.
Yeah, that Mickey says, this may sound insensitive. I don't think it comes across as insensitive, but you said, but I'm glad that they did find her remains so that her family could properly say goodbye, right? I mean, he left everything in the camper bus. Well, going for breakfast, dinner, bonfires, all sorts of things. Then he went to go fetch his Jeep. Like, dude, how much time do you think you had? All the time in the world? It's a bit weird.
Mr. Jeppe, I'm telling you what's been
All right, let's slow
marked
down
and
again.
admitted as States 79. Do you know what State 79 is?
That is correct. This is a gun box. I noticed my initials on the seals on this box. So this is the gun box that I received evidence in on this case.
And can you explain to the jury what you did as part of your examination of the firearm?
So, first of all, when we receive the evidence, we would typically open the box. The box would be sealed by our client agency, in this case, State Police. We would open the seals, open the box, and the evidence would then be packaged normally as it is here with zip tied down to the inside of the box in order to prevent it from moving around.
And were you able to tell from this firearm what the make is?
Yes. After unpacking the firearm, I would generally photograph the firearm as a first step. I would then proceed with checking the serial number of the firearm against the submission form to ensure that the firearm that I received is indeed consistent with what was submitted by the client agency, I would then proceed to record all the unique details pertaining to the firearm. That is the make, the model, the serial number, the type of magazine, the safety systems on the firearm. I would check the safety systems in order to ensure that if they in a functional condition. I would then proceed with checking the barrel to see that there are no obstructions in the barrel prior to test firing. At that time, I would also determine the direction of twist of the rifling by looking through the barrel of the firearm. Would also count the amount of lands and grooves inside the interior profile of the barrel and record those. This firearm I identified as a Glock Model 19 semi-automatic pistol.
And were the safety features working correctly?
Yes.
Is that firearm in the same condition as it would be when it was purchased?
This firearm is fitted with an aftermarket, with other words, not a standard barrel. An aftermarket barrel that I determined to be from a manufacturer called Silent Serco.
So I'm showing you now what has been marked and admitted as 79A. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what is 79A for the jury?
This is a box magazine that is compatible with the firearm I just handled, and these are unfired cartridges that were submitted with the firearm.
And
True. Maybe people don't know why I'm typing that. Kathleen says Sapphire, a colloquial expression for a person who once was from South Africa, now immigrated to another country. I am one as well. So yes, thank you for clarifying. People might be like, what is she saying? Okay, let's keep going.
what type of rounds are these?
These are SIG head-stamped 9mm Luger caliber cartridges.
So I'm now showing you what's been marked as and admitted as 52A. What is that?
This is a Silent Serco company manufactured pistol silencer.
Did you examine or did you investigate whether that silencer can be used on State 79?
Yes, I did.
And can it be used on State
Yes, it
79?
can.
How do you put the silencer on the Glock?
The aftermarket barrel is the muzzle of the barrel, with other words, the tip of the barrel is threaded. The silencer is threaded as well, so it's basically like screwing a bulb in. You screw it onto the end of the barrel.
Does it require any special tools?
No, it doesn't.
Did you put the silencer on the Glock?
Yes, I did.
About how long does it take?
I didn't specifically time it, but less than a minute.
Would this silencer be capable of fitting on another firearm?
It would be able to fit on another similarly threaded barrel, yes.
So is it fair to say that it would have to fit onto a firearm that had this aftermarket barrel?
It will only fit on a firearm that is consistent with the caliber designation of this silencer, and that basically this silencer can screw onto. It does not necessarily have to be the same manufacturer. There are actually other manufacturers that who manufacture aftermarket barrels that are threaded with the same thread pattern as found on this Silencer Co. silencer, and therefore, strictly speaking, this silencer would also fit on those barrels. But yes, certainly it would fit on the Silencer Co. aftermarket barrel that we have on the submitted Glock Model 19 pistol.
When you were conducting your test fires, did you test the firearm using the silencer and also not using the silencer?
Yes, that's correct.
Did the firearm work properly when using the silencer?
Yes, the firearm performed flawlessly with both the silencer and the without the silencer.
Does a fired cartridge or a fired bullet, does that have different markings on it if a silencer is used?
Not necessarily, but it could. Because of the fact that the silencer is an attachment to the barrel, there are some critical issues that could determine whether the bullet is in fact going to be marked by the silencer or not. The primary there would be the alignment between the silencer and the barrel. If the alignment is proper between the silencer and the barrel, then generally speaking, the bullet would not touch any part of the silencer as it moves through the silencer, and therefore the silencer would have no effect on it. However, we cannot always sort of ascertain whether it aligns perfectly by simply looking at it, and generally, therefore, in cases like this, we would also fire it with the silencer in case the bullet at some point contacts the silencer as the bullet moves through the barrel or through the silencer, and essentially causes markings that are not that are not directly relatable to the barrel.
So after you test fired the Glock and had your known standards, did you compare known standards with additional evidence that you had received in this case?
Yes, I did.
I'm now showing you. What has been previously marked and admitted as 83A. If you can tell the jury what that is.
This is a 9mm caliber fired bullet core, which I received as item and marked as item A7-1.
And just for clarification, is this core normally encapsulated in a copper jacket?
That is correct. This is not a complete bullet. This is one part of a bullet.
And did you examine 83A to one of the known standards using the comparison microscope?
I did not compare this item. A bullet core does not have sufficient markings for, or any markings for identification, therefore I did not do a comparison.
Okay. Is it, I think we already touched on this, but just to be clear, is it common for a bullet core to have markings on it?
It is uncommon, no.
Okay.
Oh, yes, rather.
So I'm now showing you what's been admitted as 91A. And what is that?
This is a fired bullet jacket.
And is this what we're talking when we talk about the copper jacketing?
This is the copper jacket, so the core would literally sort of be encapsulated in this copper jacket.
And did you do a comparison with this item with the known standards?
Yes, I did.
And what were you able to obtain results?
This bullet jacket did not have sufficient marking or unique markings for identification, so I was not able to identify it to the submitted firearm. However, the bullet is consistent in caliber, consistent in land and groove widths, consistent in twist direction with the firearm, with other words, class characteristics, as I explained earlier, and therefore I could not exclude it as having been fired from the firearm either. So therefore, my finding was an inconclusive finding. I cannot say if this bullet was fired from the firearm, and I cannot say that the bullet was not fired from the firearm.
Okay. I'm now showing you 84A. If you could explain to the jury what that is.
This is a fired bullet, consisting of both a bullet core and a bullet jacket.
And were you able to examine this item and try to make an identification?
Yes, I examined this item and determined also that it was consistent in class characteristics with the firearm, but there were insufficient individual markings for identification. Therefore, as with the other item, I was also not able to say if the bullet was fired from the firearm or if it was not fired from the firearm. I was also not able to determine if this bullet was fired in the same firearm as the submitted bullet jacket or not.
And that inconclusive result is based on a lack of individual markings?
It is based on a lack of individual characteristics, which I explained earlier, yes.
Okay. And I'm now showing you 85A. What's 85A?
85A was an item which I marked as A9-1. It is a 9mm Luger caliber fired cartridge case with an SIG headstand.
And were you able to do a comparison with this item?
Yes, I compared this firearm to the known standard from the firearm that was submitted and determined that this cartridge case was fired from the submitted firearm.
And is that based on individual characteristics or class characteristics or both?
It is based on both. We start by looking for class characteristics. If the class characteristics are consistent, we start looking for individual characteristics. So that's the sequence. Generally, if it's inconclusive, the class characteristics are consistent, but there's not sufficient consistency in individual characteristics to make a determination. In this case, both the class characteristics and the individual characteristics were in sufficient agreement to determine that this cartridge case was, in fact, fired from the firearm.
So I am going to go back to 84A. When you were examining 84A, did you notice anything about this item?
I believe that this is the item that I removed a piece of cloth from. This item, the bullet had a piece of fabric basically lodged in the nose cavity of the bullet, which I subsequently removed.
Okay, so I'm now showing you what's been marked as states 84B. Do you recognize that?
Yes, this is consistent with the piece of cloth that I removed from, or the piece of fabric that I removed from the nose cavity of the bullet.
And when you removed that, did that piece of fabric get returned to the Vermont State Police?
Yes, I returned it to them.
Your Honor, the state would move to admit states 84B.
No objection.
84B is admitted.
I do not have any other questions.
Ms. Jan?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
The defense does not have questions yet today. If you guys didn't catch the end of yesterday's stream, the judge said it'll be a short day today. It's going to be a half day, basically. They wanted to start at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, and he said he's going to go until 12:30 p.m., and that's it. Then I guess it would be lunch. He's going to let the jurors go. Oh, I don't know if they're having lunch there, but he said he'll let the jurors go, and he's got other things to do on his schedule this afternoon. So they're going to continue then tomorrow again in the morning for a full day. So, yes. Oh, he's busting out a little smile there. What you smiling at there, sir? What was just whispered in your ear there? I'm not saying anything bad about the defense today. I'm just like, what's he smiling about? Right? A lot of people say, like, how could anyone defend this guy? In every trial we watch, how could someone defend him? I think they're more defending the constitutional rights of all Americans rather than defending him, even though they are defending him right now. You know what I mean? I don't think they would have wanted to. These are public defenders in this case. So they would have been assigned to the case. And this is who they're defending, and they don't have much to work with because he confessed a lot in great detail, which the jury got to see because they got to see the entire police interview. And my goodness, he shares so much in there. And the evidence matches what he said. So like, shame, dude. What is your defense? Oh my, self-defense, huh? His defense is self-defense. Can you imagine? Wow.
The state calls Courtney Ganter.
Solemnly affirm that the evidence you shall give relative to the cause now under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth and the pains and penalties of
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you please state your name?
Courtney Ganter,
And how do you spell your last name, Courtney?
Ganter.
How are you employed?
I'm employed as a DNA analyst with the Vermont Forensic Laboratory.
What's your specific job title?
I perform casework analysis on biological evidence that's submitted to the lab in relation to criminal cases.
Do you have any other responsibilities at the lab?
I'm also responsible for maintaining equipment, reviewing other analyst case files, making sure that we're up to speed with quality assurance guidelines.
Can you please explain to the jury what your educational background is?
Yes. I went to Drexel University from 2000 to 2004, where I obtained a bachelor's degree in biology. And then I went to Arcadia University from 2005 to 2007, where I obtained a master's degree in forensic science.
Did your formal education include the study of DNA?
It did.
Did it involve any hands-on work with DNA testing techniques?
It did.
And prior to your employment at the Vermont Forensic Lab, did you hold any other positions in this field?
I did. Prior to working at the Vermont lab, I worked for the Maryland State Police in their Forensic Science Division in the DNA database unit.
As part of your employment at the lab, are you required to stay abreast of developments in the field?
Yes, we are. We're required to have at least 8 hours of continuing education every year.
Is the Vermont Forensic Lab accredited?
Yes, we are.
And does the lab follow quality assurance guidelines?
We do.
Can you give the jury some examples of what the lab does for quality assurance?
There's guidelines in place that ensure the proper training of personnel, security of evidence, proper procedures for handling evidence to ensure integrity of your results, storage of evidence, making sure that you obtain your continuing education, things like that.
I don't have to, but I would move to qualify Ms. Ganter as an expert in DNA.
Okay, so qualified.
Can you explain to the jury what DNA is?
DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, and it's the genetic material that you inherit from your parents.
Where is it found in human beings?
DNA is found in all nucleated cells throughout your body, and that means that the DNA that's present in your blood is the same as the DNA that's present in your saliva, is the same as DNA that's present in your teeth.
Is the DNA in all people the same?
The testing that we do, which is called STR analysis, the DNA profiles will be different from individual to individual.
What about identical twins?
Identical twins will have the same DNA profile.
And so you mentioned this STR analysis. What does that stand for?
STR stands for short tandem repeat, and these are small repeating patterns that are found in different locations in our DNA. During STR analysis, we utilize a commercially available kit that will look at 22 different locations. The number of times that this pattern repeats is called an allele, and the locations that we're looking at are called loci. At each location, you inherit one allele from your mom and your dad, and the combination of the locations that we look at with the alleles that are present at those locations is what is our DNA profile, and that's what we use to make comparisons to evidence in a case.
Are there some basic steps in this testing process?
Yes.
And can you explain those basic steps?
There's 4 main steps. The first step is called extraction, and during this step, we treat our sample with a series of chemicals to isolate the DNA. The second step is called quantitation, and during this step, we estimate how much DNA is present in our sample. The third step is called amplification, and we use a method called PCR, which is the polymerase chain reaction, to make multiple copies of just those alleles that we're interested in at the 22 locations. The final step is called DNA typing or visualization, and during this step, we use an instrument that's called a genetic analyzer. This instrument separates out the alleles by size and location, and it gives us a data printout. This printout is called an electropherogram. It basically looks like an EKG from like a heart monitor. It's a bunch of spikes. And this is the printout that we use to make our comparisons to evidence in the case.
Is this STR analysis commonly used in the United States?
Yes, it is.
And are there controls used in this testing process?
Yes, we utilize controls from the start to the end of the process, and these controls help to ensure the integrity of our materials that we're using as well as the results that we're getting.
And what steps do you take to deal with potential contamination?
We will generally utilize our controls to help us to determine if there's any sort of contamination. It also helps us to kind of track back and troubleshoot where the contamination may have occurred.
What type of results can you get from a DNA analysis?
There's a few, well, there's many different types of results. Some of the most common is obtaining a single source profile, which is a DNA profile that comes from one individual. This profile can be used to make comparisons to reference samples submitted from victims, suspects, or anyone else involved in the case. We can also get a mixed DNA profile, which is just a DNA sample that has more than one person contributing DNA to it. We can sometimes use that to make comparisons, but sometimes it isn't of sufficient quantity or quality to make a definitive determination. So we would say that this is for exclusion only. Another result we could get is just no DNA profile was obtained, and that's just due to the quantity that's present in the sample, or lack of quantity that's present in a sample.
Does your, can you talk to the jury a little bit about what population frequencies are?
A population frequency in related to DNA is the frequency of an allele occurring at a given location in a population. We use this data to perform the statistics that we calculate, and it's called a random match probability. And this probability is an estimate of how common the DNA profile is in a given population. So basically assigns a uniqueness to a DNA profile.
Did you receive evidence to analyze in this case?
I did.
Before I have you start talking about that, I'm going to have Judge Pack read a stipulation. So, Judge, we have stipulation 125, Exhibit 125, which is stipulation number 10.
Any objection?
No objection, thank you.
Members of the jury, the state and defendant, Joseph Ferlazzo, have agreed that you may find certain facts. This is called a stipulation. A buccal swab was collected from the defendant, Joseph Ferlazzo's left cheek on October 19, 2021 by Vermont State Police and sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. This buccal swab was analyzed by Courtney Ganter at the Vermont Forensic Lab and was in the same condition at the time of the analysis as it was when it was collected from Mr. Ferlazzo on October 19, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 3/CSST number 1. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A1. The chain of custody of the buccal swab from Mr. Ferlazzo is not being challenged. A DNA card was collected from Emily Ferlazzo's body on October 20th, 2021 by Vermont State Police during Emily Ferlazzo's autopsy at the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. This DNA card was sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. This DNA card was analyzed by Courtney Ganter at the Vermont Forensic Lab and was in the same condition at the time of the analysis as it was when it was collected from Emily Ferlazzo's body on October 20th, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 51/OCME number 15. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A4. A red pillow was collected from bag number 1 on October 20th, 2021 by Vermont State Police during Emily Ferlazzo's autopsy at the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. A cutting from the red pillow was sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. This cutting was analyzed by Courtney Ganter at the Vermont Forensic Lab and was in the same condition at the time of the analysis as it was when it was collected from bag number 1 on October 20th, 2021. This item was logged by Vermont State Police as evidence item number 59/OCME number 1B. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A6. Chain of the cutting from the red pillow is not being challenged. DNA swabs were collected from a reddish-brown stain on a mattress on October 19, 2021 by Vermont State Police during a search of the camper pursuant to a valid search warrant. These swabs were sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. These swabs were analyzed by Courtney Ganter at the Vermont Forensic Lab and were in the same condition at the time of the analysis as they were when collected from the mattress during the search on October 19, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 77/CCST van number 17A. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A10. Chain of custody of the DNA swabs collected from the reddish-brown stain on the mattress is not being challenged. A DNA swab was collected from the barrel end of a silencer on October 19, 2021 by Vermont State Police during a search of the camper pursuant to a valid search warrant. This swab was sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. This swab was analyzed by Courtney Ganter at the Vermont Forensic Lab and was in the same condition at the time of the analysis as it was when collected from the silencer during the search on October 19, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 87/CSST van number 22. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A12. Chain of custody of the DNA swab collected from the barrel end of a silencer is not being challenged. DNA swabs were collected from a saw blade on October 20th, 2021 by Vermont State Police during a search of the camper pursuant to a valid search warrant. These swabs were sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. These swabs were analyzed by Courtney Ganter at the Vermont Forensic Lab and were in the same condition at the time of the analysis as they were when collected from the saw blade during the search on October 20th, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 98/CSST van number 32A. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A13. Chain of custody of the DNA swabs collected from the saw blade is not being challenged. DNA swabs were collected from a reddish-brown stain on the underside of the shower drain on October 20th, 2021 by Vermont State Police during a search of the camper pursuant to a valid search warrant. These swabs were sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. These swabs were analyzed by Courtney Ganter at the Vermont Forensic Lab and were in the same condition at the time of the analysis as they were when collected from the underside of the shower drain during the search of October 20th, 2021. This item was logged by Vermont State Police as evidence item number 102/CSST van number 36. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A14. Chain of custody of the DNA swabs collected from the reddish-brown stain on the underside of the shower drain is not being challenged. DNA swabs were collected from a knife blade October 20th, 2021 by Vermont State Police during a search of the camper pursuant to a valid search warrant. These swabs were sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. These swabs were analyzed by Courtney Ganter at the Vermont Forensic Lab and were in the same condition at the time of the analysis as they were when collected from a knife blade during the search on October 20th, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 124/CSST, van number 44B. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A15. Chain of custody of the DNA swabs collected from the knife blade is not being challenged. DNA swabs were collected from knife blade October 20th, 2021 by Vermont State Police during a search of the camper pursuant to a valid search warrant. These swabs were sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. These swabs were analyzed by Courtney Ganter at the Vermont Forensic Lab and were in the same condition at the time of the analysis.
That's a long stipulation. I just put on the screen there why they read these, right? So, agreement on facts. Stipulations are agreements between the parties involved in the lawsuit, the prosecution and defense in criminal cases, or plaintiffs and defendants in civil cases about certain facts or evidence. By reading these stipulations in court, both sides acknowledge that these facts are not in dispute, which can simplify the trial process by narrowing down what needs to be proven.
As they were when collected from a knife blade during the search on October 20th, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 126/CSST van number 45B. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A16. Chain of custody of the DNA swabs collected from the knife blade is not being challenged. DNA swabs were collected from a knife blade October 20th, 2021 by Vermont State Police during a search of the camper pursuant to a valid search warrant. These swabs were sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. These swabs were analyzed by Courtney Ganter at the Vermont Forensic Lab and were in the same condition at the time of the analysis as they were when collected from a knife blade during the search on October 20th, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 128/CSST, van number 46B. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A17. Chain of custody of the DNA swabs collected from the knife blade is not being challenged. DNA swabs were collected from kitchen scissors on October 20th, 2021 by Vermont State Police during a search of the camper pursuant to a valid search warrant. These swabs were sent to Vermont Forensic Lab. These swabs were analyzed by Courtney Ganter at the Vermont Forensic Lab and were in the same condition at the time of the analysis as they were when collected from the kitchen scissors during the search on October 20th, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 132/CSST van number 49B. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A18. Chain of custody of the DNA swabs collected from the kitchen scissors is not being challenged. DNA swabs were collected from kitchen scissors on October 20th, 2021 by Vermont State Police during a search of the camper pursuant to a valid search warrant. These swabs were sent to the Vermont Forensic Lab. These swabs were analyzed by Courtney Ganter at the Vermont Forensic Lab and were in the same condition at the time of the analysis as they were when collected from the kitchen scissors during the search on October 20th, 2021. This item was logged by the Vermont State Police as evidence item number 134/CSST, van number 50B. This item was logged by the Vermont Forensic Lab as item number A19. Chain of custody of the DNA swabs collected from the kitchen scissors is not being challenged. As with any evidence in this trial, you must decide what weight you will give this stipulation.
Sure, okay, that was a long one. Summertime said, thank you, best mods, just sent you a few coffees. Thank you for sending the mods coffees. Also, please know that I am responsible for replying to all the mod coffees and my own coffees, and I will get to it. I'm running a little behind, but thank you so much to every single person who is sending myself and all the mods coffees. We all really appreciate it. Okay, so let's keep going. Here we go.
And States 125 is in there.
Thank you. Okay. So after hearing that, the jury now knows that you received a bunch of items for testing. Of the items that you received, the first two that was read in the stipulation were sample from Emily Ferlazzo and Joseph Ferlazzo. What is the point of receiving those kinds of samples?
The point of receiving those samples is to make comparisons from the evidence samples that are submitted in a case.
And to be clear, you don't do any sort of STR analysis on those?
We do.
You
They go through the same process as the evidence samples. They just get processed at a separate time.
And of all the other samples that were mentioned, did you test those samples in accordance with your training and experience?
I did.
And of the items that you examined, were you able to develop a DNA profile from those items?
For some of them, yes.
And was there certain items that, why weren't you able to obtain a DNA profile from some of the items?
Some of the items were just not of sufficient quantity to develop a full DNA profile.
And can you explain to the jury what item that was?
May I reference my report?
Yes.
So there was one sample, item A18, which is a sample from a blade and divot. And that sample, I was unable to develop any sort of DNA profile that would be suitable for interpretation.
Were there any swabs that you analyzed that showed inconclusive results?
Yes, there were two samples that I analyzed that had inconclusive results.
And can you explain to the jury what an inconclusive result is?
As I briefly mentioned before, an inconclusive result is basically saying you're not sure. The data that's present isn't really of sufficient quantity or quality to make a definitive determination.
And what were the samples, or what were the swabs that you obtained an inconclusive result on?
Those two items were items A12, which was the barrel end of a suppressor, as well as item A19, which was another blade. And both of them resulted, the profiles that were obtained from both of those samples, when compared to the standards submitted from Emily and Joseph, was inconclusive.
And did you, were there any swabs that you obtained a result that there was a mixture of DNA profiles on?
Yes, those two samples that I just talked about were both mixed DNA samples.
And when you receive an inconclusive result, is it possible for you to rule out an individual from that kind of a result?
The data that's present in those types of samples, you are able to make exclusions if data does not match. In this case, that wasn't the case. Data was consistent, so I can't say for sure who the source of the DNA is, but inconclusive as to their contributions to that sample.
And so of the remaining 6 swabs, were you able to match those 6 swabs to either Emily or Joseph?
The remaining 6 swabs were consistent with Emily.
And as part of your analysis of those 6 swabs, were you able to do a statistical calculation of the profile you obtained?
Yes.
And what was the result of that? Well, let's start with item 46B, which is your item number.
A17.
Yes, A17. What was the statistical calculation on that item?
For A17, which was a blade, I obtained a partial DNA profile, meaning it wasn't a full DNA profile. And the statistic that was calculated, that the probability of randomly selecting an unrelated individual that would exhibit that partial DNA profile at only one location is approximately 1 in 51 from the combined population.
And did you obtain a different statistical analysis for the remaining 5 samples?
Yes, I did.
And what was the statistical calculation on those samples?
The probability of randomly selecting an unrelated individual exhibiting the DNA profile at the full 22 loci that were tested is greater than 1 in 1 quadrillion from the combined population.
What is a quadrillion?
A quadrillion is a very large number, and it's basically the next number. If you're counting by large numbers, you go million, billion, trillion. Quadrillion would be the next set.
And so how many zeros is that?
There's 15 zeros.
What's the world's population?
About 8 billion.
And so how much is a quadrillion beyond the Earth's population?
So to get to a quadrillion, you'd have to take the world's population and multiply it by 125,000.
Can you explain to the jury what the truncation process is on this statistical analysis?
So we report our stats. We don't report numbers greater than 1 in 1 quadrillion for 2 reasons. One, based on our testing and doing these calculations, we recognize that once you have a full DNA profile, your numbers are generally way, way larger than a quadrillion. And that said, once you get to numbers larger than a quadrillion, which is already kind of a big number that's hard to handle, the enormity of the numbers start losing their impact. It doesn't really make a difference. They're just really, really, really big numbers. So we truncate at 1 quadrillion.
And did you get actual numbers in this case?
Yes.
And what were the actual numbers?
I'm referring to my report or my case file, if that's okay. For 4 of the samples that matched to Emily, the actual population, if it wasn't truncated, would be 1 in 18 octillion. So that's a number that has 27 zeros after it. For another item that matched to Emily, and this was only tested, statistics were performed on only 21 of those locations, so 1 less than the other ones. The non-truncated result would be 1 in 4 octillion.
Okay. So to summarize, you were able to conclusively match Emily's DNA to 6 items?
Yes.
And those items were your numbers item A10, which was a swab from a mattress.
Yes.
You were also able to conclusively match to the saw blade, which was item A12, or I'm sorry, A13.
Yes.
And then the reddish brown stain on the underside of the shower, which was item A14.
Yes.
And then 3 saw blades. Is that correct? We have, knives. A15,
Yes.
A16,
Yes.
and A17.
Yes.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay, so conclusively matched Emily's DNA on the mattress stain. We saw that yesterday. Blood on the mattress. Saw blade, underside of the shower. Those are all sinister listed items. So when they then say 3 knives, I was like, wait, what? Because Emily was stabbed 18 times. Imagine if it was at 3 different times. That's so scary. If so, if her DNA was on the knives just because it was in the camper van and she had used it before, okay. But the other item sounded pretty bad. He stabbed her once in the chest, 8 times in the abdomen, and 9 times in the back. So what I'm thinking is, imagine if he first stabbed her once in the chest, walked away. Later, you know what I mean? Oh my word, because they haven't said if it all happened in one go. They don't know that. That's a scary thought. This guy.
Thank you.
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Wow, the defense has had no questions today.
Judge, I'm asking for a morning break.
We have to set up technology for our next witness anyways.
We'll take a 15-minute morning break.
I like the judge said, what? Maybe as someone joked earlier, when the defendant was smiling, they were like, maybe the defense attorney said, don't worry, there'll be a morning break soon. You'll have tea and a cookie. He's like, yes, maybe that is really what they said. There we go with the morning break. Yeah, Kathleen says pure rage. Yes. Okay, so morning break. Just see what they do here.
All right.
I like this lady's jacket. So beautiful. Look at the color. I actually have a similar one. I just never wear it. Maybe I should one time. Oh, he's excited for his morning break. He's gonna go potty. He's gonna get a cookie. The state, look at the state smiling. Sure, there he's having some water. He's filling his cup. My goodness. Yes, Melissa said I like that purple on her. Even me. Me too. Okay, there they go, and the photographer. Would you guys like to stare at this? Would you like to stare at this for 15 minutes? I don't want to. Let's go forward. Let's see if he's smiling now. Self-defense. Is that what they're saying? Now that you're claiming self-defense, yeah, wow. Phoebe says you have my favorite color on today, maroon. Oh, thank you. I believe that Emily's favorite color was red. We'd heard from, I think someone in the chat said that. I think it was listed somewhere. I didn't see it on her obituary or anything, but yes. Okay, there's no sound yet. There we go. Okay. Christy says Oreos and some milk. Yes, please. Oh, you mean for him? Yeah, no, denied. Kathleen said, is it a sippy cup? It looked like he needed one when he took that sip.
Jury's back after our...
The defense attorney is just like, okay, here we go. All right.
morning break. And in the matter of State versus Joseph Ferlazzo Jr., and we'll resume.
Thank you, Judge. The state calls Detective Sergeant Carrie Fiore.
The evidence you shall give relative to the cause now under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pain and penalties of perjury.
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Detective.
Good morning.
Can you tell the jury your name and spell your last name, please?
My name is Carrie Fiore. My last name is spelled F as in Frank, I-O-R-E.
Great. And how are you employed?
I'm currently with the Vermont State Police, assigned to the Technology Investigation Unit.
Okay. How long have you been with the Vermont State Police?
Since 2007.
Were you in any prior law enforcement before that?
I was a dispatcher for a couple years prior to.
Okay. How long have you been with the technology unit?
Since 2017.
Okay. And do you have specialized training for this position?
Yes.
What is that?
I am a Celebrite certified premium operator. I have also additional training in mobile device digital forensics. I am a certified subject matter expert in call detail record and geolocation analysis through LexisNexis. I've also attended additional training for that as well, including a 40-hour basic course and the SME course. I am a member of the National Domestic Communications Assistance Center Law Enforcement Technical Forum, which is a biannual conference where technical investigators get together and we're able to meet with different providers for kind of a Q&A moment with them. I've continued additional conferences in various different types of digital forensics and call detail record and geolocation analysis.
Okay. How often are you attending trainings?
Multiple times a year.
Okay. And as a member of the TIU, what does TIU stand for again?
Technology Investigation Unit.
Okay. And as a member of the TIU, what are your general duties?
Again, I'm a trained digital forensic examiner for mobile devices, but my primary specialty is in call detail record and geolocation analysis.
Okay.
Come on, tell us what his Google searches were. That's what we want to know. Right, Stefan says, the phone data, nice. We want to know what he Googled. Oh, they're going to talk about that. Here we go.
And what type of location data do you analyze?
I really deal with two types of location data. One that is comes from call detail records, which is the location information that we can get from our cellular network providers, like T-Mobile and AT&T. And I also deal with location information that comes off of devices themselves that are forensically extracted from the devices.
Okay. Can you tell the jury briefly how mobile devices connect to or utilize cellular networks?
Yes. So the cellular network is radio frequency. It's just like the radio in your car, only it's using your cell phone that connects with an antenna from your cell phone to an antenna on a cell site, which is how the device is able to exchange data back and forth. Those cell sites, we kind of traditionally think of them as the big tall towers. That's what we used to refer to them as, that also have antennas. Nowadays, we can see those cell sites really are much smaller and can be on the sides of buildings or on top of street posts. The device is always communicating with the cellular network, and that's really designed so that when a user wants to do something on their cell phone, like make a phone call or send a text message or check the latest TikTok video, that phone is already connected to the network and can do what it's asked to do, and the user doesn't have to wait for that to happen. So as part of making sure that that occurs, the cell phone is always making sure it knows where the best serving cell site is, and the cellular network is always making sure it knows where the cell phone is so that it can provide the best network. When a cell site isn't providing that best quality signal, then it's going to hand off to another cell site which is going to provide that best quality signal.
Okay, so someone doesn't have to actually be using their phone in order for their phone to be communicating with these towers. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. Can you explain to the jury what a call detail record is, a CDR?
So call detail records are business records. It's data and records that the cellular network providers are going to keep in the course of their regular business needs. They do it for a couple of reasons. At a most basic level, it's so that they know what they're billing their subscribers for. How many phone calls did they make? How many messages did they send? At a more advanced level, they're actually using these records because they are assessing where the devices are on the network all the time, and that's called ranging data. We refer to it as distance to tower. And those records are engineering records so that they can constantly assess how the network is performing.
Okay. So is there location data that comes from the carrier that is separate from the records that you get from the actual device?
Yes.
Okay. And what are some examples of that?
So what we get from the call detail records are going to be the cell site connections, what cell site was utilized in order to complete an action. And we know where those cell sites are because we get a cell site list from the carrier. The device itself is actually also trying to know where it is at all times, and that's to enhance the user experience. So take, for example, an iPhone.
that device is always going to know where it is in space, if you will, so that when the user wants to do something like check the weather in their hometown, it already knows where it is. It doesn't have to wait for that device to figure it out, and then it can load up that right now it's in Burlington, Vermont. From that, there's also additional location information that can come off the phone, because it's taking all of that raw location information that we call cached locations, and it's interpreting it, and it will start to apply kind of categorical information to it. For example, all of the raw location information might be here at the courthouse right now. So an iPhone might say, well, this is a significant location to me right now because I haven't moved. I've stayed at the courthouse. It also might interpret where a car is parked, even if that car or that device is not connected with a car. Based on the totality of the information, it might say, well, I was driving and now I'm stopped and therefore a car was parked somewhere.
Oh, this expert is going to nail him to that location. Whether he claims, if he claimed that, no, he went to go buy snacks, because that's one of his stories, that they had an argument and he left to go buy snacks. And when he came back, Emily wasn't there. Obviously, we know that's not true based on the evidence they found, right? Okay, also, everyone, the cat, if you're new here, that I just lifted for you all to see is Fury. He's the oldest in the house. He's 4.5 years old. Time flies, huh? I thought he was like 3. He's 4.5 already, all right? And I have a little kitty gate, which is like a kiddie gate, okay, to block the cats from my office. Otherwise, they run all over the cables. And he constantly goes like a show pony to show the others how he can break in. The others have not yet figured it out, how to jump over the gate, even though they very likely can. The girls don't know how to do it yet. Okay, so that was Fury. All right, so lady, tell us the evidence you have.
Okay, so just as that last example you gave, if somebody has parked, when you go back in, it'll actually tell you where you parked your car. Is that right?
Yes, you can see some of that information within the settings of the device.
Okay. So then how do you analyze this data once you receive it from the carrier?
So I use a program that's called LexisNexis Accurate Tracks, and I'm able to take the different types and the different sources of location information and process it using this tool. And what this tool does is it creates a map that I can use Google Earth, which is pretty standard on everybody's computer, to be able to navigate through the location information from the different sources. In order to do that, I need those cell site lists that I can get from the carrier so I know where the cell sites are located at. Once I've created those maps, excuse me, I'll validate it to make sure that it's been processed correctly and everything's showing correctly. And then when I conduct my analysis, I'm really kind of looking for a couple of things. I'm looking for how that device is utilizing a cellular network, patterns that it's displaying, times when it's moving versus times when it's not. And that's all conducted through looking at maps.
Okay. And before we get to this particular case, have you been qualified as an expert in geolocation analysis and CDR call detail records in Vermont?
Yes.
Okay. Judge, the state would move to qualify her as a subject matter expert.
I'll do it if there's no objection.
There's no objection. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so did you do a geolocation analysis in this case?
Yes.
And what was the time frame that you were analyzing?
I primarily focused in on October 15th through the 19th.
Okay. And why did you focus on those days?
From the cumulative case file, those were the dates that appeared of the most interest. It was also the dates from search warrants.
Okay. And did you create an exhibit for the jury outlining your analysis in this case?
Yes.
Okay. Is this it?
Yes.
It's marked as States 115. Judge, the state would move to admit States 115.
Objection.
State 115 is admitted without objection.
And States 126 is the final stipulation for the court to read.
Just as a reminder, or for those who don't know, it is believed that Emily Ferlazzo was murdered in the early morning hours of October 16th of 2021. So that would be, they said, sometime, between midnight and 1:30ish, based on when Joseph Ferlazzo turned Emily's phone off, turned his phone off, and back on again. So that's going to be interesting as well. So that's why they looked at this range, October 15th to the 19th of 2021, based on also his story of when they parked. He said that, Emily went berserk and she lay down for 5 to 10 minutes and then he jumped on top of her and shot her twice. I don't know how that relates to self-defense, but okay. Interesting. Will be very interesting to hear what he says if he takes the stand. So they're going to look at all of that cell phone activity. I'm sure he's, you guys already saying map time. Probably all the locations he was at, taking his phone around. He apparently threw Emily's phone away. He put her phone, wallet, sunglasses, and what else was there? Some other item of hers? In a, like a shopping bag, and threw it away at a gas station.
I would move to admit that first, Judge Stein.
Any objection to reading stipulation 11 and states 126 is admitted in evidence? Members of the jury, the state and the defendant, Joseph Ferlazzo, have agreed that you may find certain facts. This is called a stipulation. State's exhibit number 115 is a PowerPoint presentation that will not be entered into evidence but will be used for demonstrative purposes to aid in the testimony of Detective Sergeant Carrie Fiore. This PowerPoint presentation is based in part on a stipulation to the following facts. Joseph Ferlazzo's cellular telephone number is 802-355-8485, and the cellular carrier is AT&T. Emily Ferlazzo's cellular telephone number is 603-540-2955, and its cellular carrier is T-Mobile. Further, the phone records related to 1, these telephone numbers, 2, Joseph Ferlazzo's iPhone, as well as any 3 Facebook records, were all received through valid search warrants, and the authentication of the records and data received from each is not being challenged. As with any evidence in this trial, you must decide what weight you will give this statement. 126 is admitted.
Oh, presentation time. We do like that as well. Here we go.
So, Detective Fiore, what data sources did you use in order to create this?
So for this exhibit, I used the T-Mobile records for Emily's number ending in 2955. I used a singular Facebook location that came from the Facebook account ember.schwartz. That was also for Emily. For Joseph, I used the AT&T records for the phone number ending in 8485, as well as the device extraction that came from an iPhone, which was evidence item number 14.
Okay. And all of the data that you used for these analysis was gained through search warrants, is that correct?
Yes, this is a list of all of the files that were obtained via search warrants that were utilized for this exhibit.
Okay. And did you use this data to generate maps included in this exhibit?
Yes.
And what are we going to see? What is the jury going to see on these slides?
So up in the upper right-hand corner is going to be kind of a key.
Whoa, 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 lady. We got to do our map time song if you're just going to go like that and do map time. Here we go. Okay, now we can carry on.
So all of the data from the different sources is color-coded. So anything that's red is associated with those AT&T records for Joseph. Anything that's pink is associated with the iPhone, evidence item 14. Everything that is blue is associated with the T-Mobile records for Emily. As there was only one Facebook location, it is also colored blue, but it is not listed on here. All of the locations of interest are designated by icons. The legend is over on the right-hand side to show what those icons are in reference to. Again, this is Google Earth. This is the program that I use to look at these maps. Up in the upper left-hand corner is going to be a timeline slider. This is going to move throughout the presentation. It's going to represent the time frame that is being displayed on the map at that given time. For the most part, this is going to be in about a 5-minute increment, but there's a couple of times where it's going to fluctuate throughout the exhibit.
Okay. And looking at the right side, the A, B, C, D, just so the record is clear, they say Bass residence, Lang residence, Bear Run Road, and Lemons residence. How are those determined to be locations of interest?
Through my review of the case file information.
Okay. And you mapped the location data or information from these data sources. So what does it look like when a cell site is used?
So down at the bottom of the screen is a snippet of what the original record looks like. This particular one is from the AT&T records that we can see because it's designated by the red in color. Above it is a snippet or a screenshot of the corresponding cell site list. So when I'm looking at these records, over on the left-hand side is going to be the transactional information. This is a voice call that's showing up here on the screen. There's a date, a time, a to, a from, and how long it lasts. There's going to be a call bubble that associates that same information. The difference is that it's going to be converted into local time, whereas the original record is in time code universal, so it is converted. In the middle there is the IMEI. This is like the serial number of the device. So this is the serial number of the device that was using the AT&T network. During my analysis, I did coordinate this with item number 14 to show that it is the same device. For every cell site, there's going to be an identifier, and then there's that location, like I previously testified to, that we know the locations of them. The location of the cell site is going to be represented by that push pin on the map. That's where that cell site is physically located. There's a line that kind of goes up the middle there. That's called the azimuth. That's just basically the direction that cell site is pointing. These cell sites are pointed in, and if you imagine like a clock, they're pointed at an orientation that's in degrees. And then the red shaded area, this is called the radio frequency horizontal plane. This is something that my tool, Accurate Tracks, will actually map out as well. This is the estimated handoff area of that cell site. This is not coverage. This is the area in which the device likely was in order to use that cell site before it would hand off to another cell site for that better quality signal.
Okay. And what does distance to tower look like?
So distance to tower is that ranging information that I talked about earlier. This is where the network is trying to figure out where that device is at any given time. And it's measured in a variety of different ways. But in this, at the bottom, we have that screenshot of the original record. This is T-Mobile as designated by the blue. That push pin there is, again, that location of that cell site, where it is on the map. Our azimuth is depicted on here, which way that cell site was pointed at that time. And then there's a distance from the cell site. In this case, in this example, it's 3.01 miles away from the cell site. That's what that arc represents. That arc is 3.01 miles away from the cell site. So for distance to tower, what I'm looking at is that device is somewhere along that arc.
So what does the location information from the device look like on a map?
So from the device itself, it's going to be colored in pink. This is an example of a trip. So this is where the device said that a trip was started, and there's going to be that call box with that time that it started, and then it's going to move over to where the trip ended. There's no location accuracy rating for these. It's just a singular coordinate point and the time that the trip started, the trip ended. With these trips, there typically is going to be a significant location visit that corresponds with it. And that is the device saying that I was in this location from this time to this time. So there's a start and an end to the significant locations. There's going to be a couple other types of location information that came from the device, but it's going to look the same. It's going to be a dot on the map.
Okay. So when you, I think those are all the things you said that the jury was going to see. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So when you conducted your analysis in this case, what did you focus on?
I focused on a timeline of events.
Okay. And is that depicted in your exhibit?
Yes.
Okay. So starting with October 15th, can you walk us through your analysis? It looks like the first grouping of time is from 8:31 in the morning through 3:47 in the afternoon.
Yes. So what I saw doing my analysis beginning around 8:30 in the morning is Joseph's device was using that AT&T network, and it was down in that Northfield, New Hampshire area. We can see that the Bass residence fell within the H-plane, or that estimated handoff area of the cell sites that were getting utilized. I saw that it kind of bounced back and forth between a couple of cell sites, again, looking for that best quality signal, but staying pretty much the same. Emily's device had that distance to tower, and in this example here, when it's happening, this is about 11:37, the distance to tower actually crosses. And when I see that, it's called multilateration, the device is somewhere in close proximity to where that device is crossing at. And I saw that that happened in near proximity to the Bass residence. As I continued my analysis, I saw that kind of a pattern emerged between these devices and how they were utilizing their respective cellular networks. Joseph's device kind of was bouncing around the same ones. Emily's device was bouncing around the same ones. About 12:41 is when the evidence item 14, or Joseph's iPhone, started a trip, and that was in close proximity to the Bass residence. There's no location accuracy for that one. It's just that coordinate location. As my analysis continued through, I could see that there was a change in cell site locations for Joseph's device. Emily's device kind of stayed in that same area, but we had that trip stop, or that trip end, for Joseph's iPhone. When that trip ended, there was a corresponding significant location visit. In this particular case, it went from about 12:52 to 12:54 on the 15th. And as I examined it further to see what was down in the area of where that significant location visit occurred, I saw that it was actually a Market Basket shopping center down in that area. So after that significant location visit ended, a new trip was started. And moving forward, I saw that the device moved back to the area of the Bass residence. And that cell site information, again, I kind of saw the changes in the cell sites, and it went back to that earlier pattern that I had seen previously when item 14 was in the area of the Bass residence. This significant location visit was from 13:08 until 15:45 on the 15th. So I saw that that device had been there for a while, and going through the cell site activity and how the cellular network was pretty much the pattern that I saw. These devices weren't moving around. It was the same cell site usage, and I saw the same network activity for both of the devices. And that lasted until about 15:45. Around 15:45 to 15:47 is when I saw a change. Over on the left-hand side, I can actually see that distance to tower has a distinctive change as those distances got shorter, and that occurred at the same time that a trip was started on item 14. So in my analysis, I saw this as the beginning of movement.
Okay. And so were you able to determine where the devices went at approximately 3:47 on Friday the 15th?
Yes.
Okay, so it looks like the next timeline you have is from 3:47 p.m. to 6:45 p.m. Is that right?
Yes.
And so you're going to sort of do the same thing you just did, but for that 3-hour time frame?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So once I saw that movement start, then I began to see both of the devices had a shift in cell site usage over to the west. And this is clear to me that this is now devices that are moving. As they continued to move west, it got a little busy. There was a lot of activity. Depends on the area that they're in for why there might be more, but overall, they're definitely shifting to the west. A little bit, about 429-ish. Item 14 had a trip that ended, and with that trip ending, there was also that significant location visit that lasted from 1629 to 1633. These also fell within the H-planes of the cell site usage at the time, corroborating everything. When I went to examine it further to see what was in the area of that significant location visit, I saw that there was a gas station. I believe that this was in the Andover, New Hampshire area.
Just waiting for them to say a Walmart, right?
As I continued with my analysis, I watched that cell site usage continue to change. It was a clear pattern of movement between both devices as they started to move to the west. There was a trip that was started on item 14, and then I saw the cell site usage reflect that those devices were moving in the same pattern of travel. They went up to the Lebanon, New Hampshire area. That trip that had started previously is now ended. And I can see that that trip occurs, the coordinate location for that trip occurs in close proximity to where the distance to tower was. A significant location visit was triggered from 1729 to 1722 until 1729 hours. And when I examined the area further, because both devices were in that same area, I could see it was a shopping center. The location information was kind of in that whole parking lot. There's a Target there. There was a Supercuts. So that significant location visit continued for a couple more minutes. And I could see that the distance to tower for Emily's device was still maintaining that same area. And then a trip was started on item 14. As my analysis continued for this time frame, we're now around like the 1730 hours, I can see the cell site usage for both devices showed that they were traveling. And they were showing the same patterns of travel and movement in the same areas. At about 6:45 or 1845, the trip ends for item 14.
Okay, thank you. Just looking, we're looking at a lot of data here. Your testimony is that the devices are in the same area, but they don't always look like they are. Can you explain to the jury why they might be slightly different, in slightly different spots if they're together?
So the cell site network is based on the respective carrier, AT&T and T-Mobile in this case. They have their cell sites put in different places. So the physical location of the cell sites might not be the same. Sometimes they're co-located, sometimes they're different. But when I'm conducting my analysis, I'm again looking for that pattern, and I can see that the general pattern is that they're in the same areas at the same time.
Okay, and in this case, one of the phones, one of the carriers was it Joseph's was AT&T?
Yes.
And Emily's was T-Mobile?
Yes.
Right. Okay. And you never analyzed Emily's phone in this case, is that right?
Correct.
We didn't, because it was never provided to you?
Correct.
Okay, so this trip appears to have ended at approximately 6:45 on Friday the 15th. Where are the devices now?
So when I look at this now, about 6:45, that trip has ended. There's a significant location visit. I can see that significant location visit falls along Emily's distance to tower again, showing that they're in the same area. This visit was from 6:45 until 6:57. And when I went to examine the area a little bit further, this is the Waterbury, Vermont area. And I can see that Crossroads Deli is in that same area of where that device was.
Okay, and are you able to tell where it goes from here?
Yes. So they're there for a little bit of time. when that significant location visit ends, then we'll see that trip start, or I saw that trip start. And then there's going to be a shift in the cell site usage. So I can see the trip started. And when I'm looking for movement, again, I'm looking for that cell site location usage, and I saw that shift happen over to the west now. I saw that these devices then were utilizing a cell site over in the Bolton, Waterbury-ish area, but together the H-planes and that distance to tower were showing that they were in the same area, and that trip ended falling within all of the cellular network data.
Okay, and we see that there is a C in the kind of middle of this red space, and that is Bear Run Road. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Were you able to, do you have anything else on that point?
Yes.
Okay.
So at about 1919 is when that trip ended, and that significant location visit started. When I start to look in further, I can see that that falls along Bear Run Road. That significant location visit for Joseph's device went from 1919 on the 15th until 12:04 the next day on the 16th. So overnight hours.
And what happened with the devices in the area of Bear Run in that time frame?
So they kind of kept showing the same cell site usage throughout the evening. Again, I'm looking for those patterns, and I'm showing that devices are just not moving around. At 2013 was when Emily's Facebook account had her last message, and so her distance to tower at that time was consistent with that Bear Run Road area. They're not moving around. The cell site usage just kept going on the same and same. At 2139 or 939 is an outgoing message from Joseph's device to the phone number ending in 7611. But the cell site information is still showing that these devices aren't moving around. They're still in the same area. They're utilizing the network in the same way. And that continues at 10:14 or 22:14 hours is the singular Facebook location information that I had, which when mapped also indicated that the device was in the Bear Run Road area. It fell along the distance to tower arcs from Emily's T-Mobile call detail records. So all of this together is just showing that corroboration between multiple different sources, which is what I use in my analysis. And that same pattern continued up and through midnight.
Okay. So we are now at midnight on October 15th, Friday, October 15th. So it looks like the next timeline event is October 16th from midnight through 3:40 a.m. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so what happened with the devices starting at midnight on the 16th?
So the timeline slider is actually going a little slow now. Sometimes it goes fast, sometimes it goes slow. The reason it's going slow is because as I'm going through my analysis, I noticed that I stopped having cell site information for Joseph's device. When I looked into the item 14, I found that at midnight 01, the iPhone was powered off. Emily's device continued to utilize the T-Mobile network. Again, I'm looking at those same arcs. They're static, they're not moving around, they're not changing cell sites. And then at 1 o'clock in the morning is the last time that Emily's device connected with the T-Mobile network. So I went a little bit of time. I did not have any cell site usage for either device. And this continued until about 2:10 in the morning, or excuse me, 1:35 in the morning, it was powered back on. There's a brief little amount of time that it was roaming on another network, so I still didn't have anything mappable until it hit the AT&T network. Once it hit the AT&T network, I saw it was utilizing the same cell sites that it had been before. Again, looking at that pattern over and over again, seeing it the same way that I had been seeing it previously. And then at 2:10, the device was powered back off again. So once it gets powered off, I have nothing mappable. That device is not communicating with the network. Emily's device is no longer communicating with the network, and it just continued that way until 3:39 when item 14 or Joseph's device was powered back on.
In all the data that you reviewed for the full 4 days, did you ever see any other times where the device was powered off or on?
No.
It's just between midnight and 3:40 a.m. on Friday night into Saturday morning?
Yes.
After item 14 and Joseph's phone was powered back on and the data resumed, what happened to the device? It looks like the next 3:40 a.m. to approximately noon.
So once the device was powered back on, it showed that same pattern of cell site usage. So it's not moving around, it's not changing cell sites, it's just showing that same pattern. At 7:48, there was an outgoing message from item 14 to the phone number ending in 7611. Again, knowing that cell site usage is showing the same pattern, the device hasn't changed its location while it was sending that message. Moving forward, at 8:02, there was an outgoing message again to the 7611 number from the item 14. During that time, that cell site usage is showing that consistency. The timeline slider is going to open up, and the reason for this is because up until about 12:03, that device was not moving around enough to see any movement. So I opened it up to be able to see that it's a static pattern. This is also during the time that, from my events that I analyzed, that this is when they had gone to Maxie's restaurant, and Maxie's fell within the estimated handoff range, or that H-plane, of the cell sites that are being utilized. But there's not enough information for me to be able to narrow down the specific location of the device at this time. It's just that H-plane.
Okay, so from your next timeline is around noon on the 16th, Saturday the 16th through 7 p.m. Can you tell the jury what the device was doing during that time?
So at about noon 03 is when I started to see movement. There was a trip that was started from item 14. And then I saw that the cell sites that get utilized are going to shift. And I'm going to see that movement as they kind of move up towards the Franklin County area. And that trip is going to end. Again, that was during my analysis, a clear change from that static pattern of cell site usage to that movement. The significant location visit that happens is from 1301 until 1906, and I saw that occurred in near the location B, which is the Lang residence. So that device was there for several hours at the Lang residence. So during my analysis then, I started to look to see what the network activity was during that time. And I could see that pattern start to emerge again of just kind of the same cell site usage over and over again. At 109 or 1309 is an outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14. And I could see, again, that cell site usage now. That H-plane encompasses the Lang residence. So everything's kind of corroborating itself. There was an outgoing message to Emily's number at 120 or 1320.
This guy sent 16 messages to Emily's phone, knowing full well that she was no longer alive, based on his confessions, right? So what are you doing? Talk to me, please. 16 messages, and he got more and more angry from what the state said yesterday.
So looking at that cell site usage, I'm kind of seeing the same cell site location getting used over and over. At 152 is another outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14. And it's designated in pink to show that that is the source of that information. At 2:02 is an outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14. And I haven't seen during this time while I was doing my analysis, I didn't see a change in cell site usage. There's a second message to 2955 at 2:02 to Emily's number. I'm seeing that same cell site usage reflective of the Franklin County area. I don't have anything more specific at this point, but I do have that significant location visit. At 2:09 is an outgoing call from Joseph's number to Emily's number. See that device is just utilizing that same cell site location. It's covering the Franklin County area. I knew from the significant location visit that the phone thought it was still in the same place. At 2:35 was an outgoing call to Emily's number from Joseph's number. At 2:57 is an outgoing message from item 14 to Emily's number. And that cell site usage is showing that same pattern. I know that significant location visit is still in effect right now. So that device is not moving around. And then at little after 3 is when item 14 had a new type of location information that I was able to map, and this is a parked car location, and this was at 1503. There's no location accuracy, but the coordinate location fell close to the Lang residence up on Meadowbrook Road. So it's all consistent. This is that pattern that I'm looking for when I do my analysis, is everything is kind of showing the same location. The timeline slider kind of speeds up now because it's just the same pattern over and over and over again. And then at 6:55 is an outgoing call from Joseph's number to Emily's number. Around that same time is another parked car location. So that iPhone thought that it had a parked car location. I can see that coordinate point fell within the H-plane of that voice call, and it is near the Lang residence. And then kind of moving forward in time, from item 14, I also saw some pictures that were taken, and the data from the pictures, it's called the EXIF data, show that they were created on the 16th at 1859 or 6:59, and they were of tattoos.
Okay, thank you. Does the device, so this is ending at 6:59 p.m. on Saturday night, does the device stay at the Lang's residence overnight? Or does it move again?
It moves.
Okay, so where does the device go next? It looks like you have 6:59 p.m. to 8:38 as the next group.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
So initially it's using that same cell site, and then there's a trip that's started on item 14. And as I was doing my analysis, I could see that during that trip, then I saw a change in the cell site usage. The H-planes are now oriented in a different way, so that's showing a device that has now moved. There is also the end of the trip, as well as a significant location visit. That visit occurred from 1915 until 2032. And when I examined it further to see what was in the area where that significant location visit occurred, I could see that it was down in St. Albans, and Twig's Restaurant, Gastropub, was in that area of where that significant location visit occurred. So when I saw that trip happen, I also saw that change in cell sites corroborating that information for device movement. Moving forward in time, there was that change in the cell sites. At 20:09 was an outgoing message from item 14 to Emily's number. And then when that significant location visit ended, a new trip was started for item 14. The coordinate location was down in that same area of where the significant location visit was. And then that trip ended and another significant location visit started. And I can see that significant location visit was again in the Meadowbrook area. And that one went from 20:38 on the 16th overnight until 10:36 on the 17th. So that device stayed in that same area overnight.
Okay, so we are now on Sunday, October 17th. And is there a text message from Joseph's phone to Emily's the next morning?
Yes. So at 8:37, that device was using that same cell site that I saw in the overnight hours, consistent that it hadn't moved. And then moving forward to 8:45 in the morning is an outgoing message from item 14 to Emily's number.
And that text was sent while at the Langs area of the Langs residence. Is that correct?
The significant location visit was still in the area of Meadowbrook.
Okay. And at some point, did the device start to move away from that area?
Yes.
What time did that occur?
Around 10:36.
Okay. So it looks like the next block of time is 10:36 to 12:04?
Yes.
So 10:36 a.m. until around noon on Sunday, October 17th?
Yes.
Okay. Tell the jury what happened with the device in that time.
So at 10:36 is when a trip was started from item 14. And through my analysis, I could see that that device then traveled south based on the cell sites that were utilized. It left the Franklin County area, traveled south, and went down into the Burlington area. And I could see those cell sites started to kind of congregate in the Burlington area. The trip ends, and then a significant location visit was initiated. When I looked a little bit further, I could see that significant location visit fell within the H-plane of the cell sites that were getting utilized. This visit went from about 11:14 until 11:58 in the morning. And when I examined it further to see what was down in that area, it was Burlington area. And I could see that Muddy Waters was in that area of where that significant location visit occurred. So moving forward, I saw the cell site usage being consistent, staying in the Burlington area, moving forward. And then when a trip ended and another significant location visit started, it was a couple streets over, but still in the Burlington area. And this trip, or excuse me, this visit lasted from 12:04 until 13:19 on the 17th. And when I went to look further to see what was in the area of where this significant location visit was, I could see that Henry's Diner was in that area. And so overall, while the device was down in the Burlington area, those locations that came out of Item 14 were consistent with the cell site usage.
Okay. And at some point, does the device leave the Burlington area?
Yes.
And which direction does it go?
It actually went to the South Burlington area.
Okay. And then does it eventually go back up towards St. Albans?
Yes.
Okay. And what time does that trip start?
At 14:03 or 2:03.
Okay. So the next block of time is 2:03 p.m. through 8:12 p.m. on, again, Sunday, October 17th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if you could take us through starting at 2:03 p.m.
So at 2:03 is an outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14. I've got cell site usage down in the South Burlington area. And then that trip is started in that same area. Again, those H-planes are consistent with that device information. And then I could see that those cell sites, again, showed that that device traveled back up to the Franklin County area. Because the cell sites that are getting utilized are changing in their locations. The trip ended, and then a significant location visit started at the time that that trip ended. And this visit went from 14:57 until 15:09 on the 17th. And when I examined further to see what was down in that area of where that visit occurred, I could see that this was the Hannaford's Plaza in St. Albans. And so again, I can see that that visit fell within the H-plane. So everything is showing corroboration between the different sources of location information. A new trip was started, or will be started. And I can see those H-planes there. That cell site information starts to change. There's a shift. And then it goes over, kind of cell sites over on the eastern side. That trip is ended. And a significant location visit is initiated. And that significant location visit, again, is down on Meadowbrook. And this visit lasted from 15:20 on the 17th until 15:32 the next day on October 18th.
Okay, so during that time frame, the device is not moving.
The cell site activity was repeated.
Okay. Is anything happening
time.
on the phone during that time?
Yes. So as we move forward in time, at 7:59 to 8 o'clock, there were actually 3 outgoing calls from Joseph's number to Emily's number, as well as an outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14. That cell site usage is the same as what I had seen previously. So it's just using the same cell sites over and over again. And then at 8:12 was an outgoing message from item 14 to Emily's number.
Okay. So that is ending at 8:12. It looks like the next block is midnight. Is there anything of interest between 8:12 p.m. and midnight occurring on the phone?
It was the same cell site usage over and over.
Okay. And so we are now moving to midnight on the 18th, so Sunday night into Monday morning, from midnight to 10:25 a.m. Was there any activity on the phone during that time?
Yes. So at midnight 05 on the 18th is an outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14.
Did you see that message? Oh my word, is like, get your ass home. What? This is far enough. Unhappy face, angry face. Get your ass home. I gotta go back to New Hampshire. Are you coming back? What does he mean he has to go back? He lived on her parents' property in his camper bus. They apparently, the couple, lived in the camper bus on her parents' property. So he's like, yeah, I gotta go. For what? He didn't have work. He was a freelance tattoo artist. Where you going, bro? Oh my goodness.
14th. And this is all occurring during that significant location visit that was on Meadowbrook. The cell site usage is showing the same pattern. At 1:05 is another outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14. Then moving forward, again, I saw the same cell site usage, and I say that over and over again because these are the patterns that I look for in my analysis. At 4:09 and 4:10 are outgoing voice calls from Joseph's number to Emily's number. They're utilizing those same cell sites. That pattern continued. That device is not moving around enough that it needs to hand off to new cell sites. At 9:06 is an outgoing message from item 14 to 2955. Also at 9:06, a couple seconds later, was an outgoing voice call from Joseph's number to Emily's number. This is still all occurring with that significant location visit. That was still going on. At 10:25 is an outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14.
Oh, look at him. You're an asshole. I don't deserve this. Yana. Wow. He's texting her angry messages, even though he's fully aware she's no longer alive, because he later, of course, told police, yes, he shot her. He also stabbed her and dismembered her. So, in hindsight, how eerie are these text messages?
Okay, is that the last, in that span of time, is that the last activity?
Yes.
Okay. So it appears that the next block of time doesn't start until 3:32 that same afternoon. So from 10:25 a.m. to 3:32 p.m., was there no important or no activity on the device?
It was that same pattern of cell site usage.
Okay. And so the next block of time, we are now on Monday afternoon, October 18th at 3:32. Does the device move or have further activity?
Yes, it starts to move.
Okay, show us that.
So when that trip was started at about 3:32, it was started in the area of the Lang residence. It was on the Meadowbrook. And then that cell site usage displayed that movement. I could see that it started to travel southeast, and it kept handing off to different cell sites, and then that trip ended. That ending trip, there was also a significant location visit that was triggered. That went from 1618 until 1637. That visit fell within the H-plane of the cell site that was being utilized at that time. When I examined it further, I could see that there was the Maple Fields that's in Waterbury, that's Waterbury Stowe Road, that was in the area of where that significant location visit occurred. When that significant location visit ended, after a couple of minutes, then a new trip was started, and that device began moving again. And I could see that that device started handing off to multiple cell sites again. I could see that movement as it traveled southeast, and it went down through the White River Junction, Lebanon area, and continued down into New Hampshire. When that trip ended, there was a significant location visit for item 14. It fell within the H-plane of the cell site that was getting utilized at that time. This particular visit went from 1747 until 1758. When I examined the area further to see what was down in the area where this visit occurred, I could see that there was a gas station. Down in this area. So that movement pattern was pretty clear to me. Definitely a change from that static pattern that I had seen earlier. And all of my data was being corroborated. The device then started to move again. And as I watched those cell sites start to move and hand off, there was another device location information that's going to pop up that falls within those H-planes. And that is sourced to Find My on the iPhone. It is not a stationary event like a parking event or a significant location visit. It's just a latitude and longitude that is sourced to the Find My. So the device ended up traveling over towards that Northfield area, getting into the general area around 625. And then it continued to utilize multiple cell sites. And then at about 6:35 is when I started to see the cell site pattern that I had seen back on the 15th, when that device was in the area of the Bass residence. And that was the pattern that stuck out to me. That lasted up until about 8:15 is when I saw a change in that pattern occur. And then there was a new item 14 location information that occurred. This one was a parking event, a parked car, and this again was at 2015. And when I examined the area further to see what was in the area, there's no location accuracy for this one. It's just a latitude and a longitude. I looked down further and I could see that there was a gas station in this area.
Okay, so this is still, we're back around 8:15 p.m. In the area of the Bass residence, is that correct?
It had moved away, the pattern had changed, and that parking car location was in the area of the gas station at 8:15.
Okay, so it looks like you have a next timeline of 8:15 through 11:19 p.m. Was there significant activity during that time?
Yes.
Okay. And did the device stay in New Hampshire or did it leave?
It began to travel and move.
Okay, so you can show us that.
Again, starting around 8:15 is when I saw that change in the pattern to show that device movement. I saw the cell site usage, again, was showing that it just was handing off to multiple cell sites as that device was moving around, traveled up north. Now it's in the Burlington area, and it continued north back up towards the Franklin County area. We're at about 11 o'clock at night. But this time I saw a change from that pattern that I had seen earlier. Now it was utilizing cell sites further east. This was a different pattern than what I had seen back when it was in the Meadowbrook area. This was at 2319 was an item 14. This is again a parked car location, and this fell within proximity of the Lemons residence. That's the icon D there, showing that was consistent with that change in cell site information that I had seen.
Okay, so the device showed an arrival at the Lemons residence at approximately 11:19 p.m. on Monday, the 18th.
There was a parked car location at 2319.
Okay, at the Lemons residence, or near the Lemons residence. Okay. Is there, looks like quite a big jump. Is there mappable data from 11:19 through 3:02 a.m.?
No.
Okay. And why might that be, or why is that?
The device was roaming on different wireless networks or cellular network carriers, and that's not anything that I could map from the information that I had.
Meaning there wasn't any cell service? Is that?
There was not AT&T. The device was not able to communicate with the AT&T network. It had to go to a different network in order to have service.
Okay. And so when does the mapped data resume?
At 3:02 on the 19th.
Okay. And can you show us, it looks like 3:02 a.m. to 4:07 a.m. is the final timeline. Can you show us what happens during that time?
So when the AT&T data resumed, the cell site usage resumed, it was that same cell site that it had left off at previously, over on the eastern side, and the Lemons residence fell within the H-plane. And my analysis saw that there was that shift in the cell site usage over to the west, went back over into the St. Albans area, and then at about 4:06 is when a cache location started. And this is that raw location data that I previously talked about, that the phone knows where it is. And that cache location, when I examined further to see what was in the area of where that cache location indicated that the device was, and I saw that that was the St. Albans barracks for the Vermont State Police.
Okay. And what happens with the device after that?
It stayed in that same area. The cache locations were consistent with the St. Albans barracks, and the cell site usage overlaid where those cache locations were.
Okay. And are you aware of the circumstances that led the device to end up at the St. Albans Police Barracks?
It's my understanding that it was in a Jeep that was transported from the Lemons residence to the barracks.
Okay. Those are, is that the final timeline that you have?
Yes.
So there was no other mappable data after that?
For this, there was mappable data. It just was that same pattern in the barracks.
Okay. Thank you.
Nice. That was a really great presentation. Golden Sputlet said, so far, all evidence is so strong and irrefutable. His self-defense just screams desperate and pathetic. He was man enough to commit the crime. Man up and take your punishment. Yeah, this guy is just wasting a lot of people's time. Can you imagine the time it took to make this presentation? Oh my word, the time, the effort, the everything from every expert, every witness. And he's just sitting there, just writing it out, you know, just like, okay, buying himself time. I'm speculating before he gets sent to prison forever. Again, I'm speculating, in my opinion.
That's all the questions that I have.
I have no questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And again, the defense has no questions. What can they ask about that? Well, we've seen another trial. They could say, are you an IT expert? Yeah, well, cell phone data expert, yeah. Okay, and how do you know that he was even with his phone? Could have been anyone with his phone, right? But no, the defense has no questions. Also, thank you to Grizzly Cat for finding all these beautiful pictures of Emily. Look at it. Look at this pretty picture here. Oh my goodness. So thank you so much. Oh, they're approaching. There he is. Baby boy, do you need a blanket? A dry donut, perhaps? A lukewarm coffee? Nappy? Nappy change. This guy. Oh my word. Does he think anyone is going to believe his side of the story? Well, we'll have to see if he takes a stand and what the hell he comes up with, right? Kim said, great witness. She should get a raise. How do you know what she gets paid? Right? Maybe she did get a raise. No, but it was really good. It was really good. IR Geek said, excellent presentation and more importantly, factual. The presenter is clearly stating what they can and cannot learn from the cellular data. Yes. Oh dear, baby boy. No. We're going forward a little bit here. What's happening? Okay, the judge is going to say something. Melissa said he needs a swaddle and a bottle. Yes. Shame. Do you feel sorry for yourself? This guy. Rachel Jones says coffee. Yeah, he wants hot coffee. If you didn't see the police interview, they showed it on day 1. It's time-stamped for you, and they continued with it on day 2. And my goodness, this guy with his blankie, donut, burger without the bun, didn't eat the fries, wanted a hotter coffee than he was served. He's like, this is not hot enough. Oh, he's writing something down now. He's a very intelligent, very good boy. Okay, take it in. Studious at his own trial.
All right, we're just trying to give you a weather report of what to expect. We think we're gonna, we have nothing further we can do today. So we'll release you for today, ask you to come back. We'll start again at 9 tomorrow, so be back at 8:45. We expect we should be able to get through all the evidence tomorrow. And probably do summations and charges sometime on Thursday. We will have some things to take care of after all the evidence is closed, so we have to figure out how long that will take. But we should be at least summing up and closing on Thursday, we're hoping.
Summing up and closing on Thursday, Judge. So you know he's got no defense. So you don't think he's going to take the stand for 3 days, huh? Not in his courtroom. Thursday. Closing. Okay. Verdict, what? 42 seconds? As short as his confession? The jury will like walk in, all 12, with the 4 alternatives. Bye, 4 alternatives. Okay, you could sit in another room. Oh, whoa, they're coming back in. Very, very guilty. Judge, do we have to leave the room to deliberate? Yes. Okay, we're back.
And with that, I'll ask you to have a really nice day. And overnight, not talk about the case, not try to learn anything about the case. And we'll see you tomorrow for a 9 o'clock start.
Oh, the judge is so sweet. The judge is like, with that, I will ask you to have a really nice day. Yeah, baby boy going down. Sorry. Try so hard to remain neutral. I can't in this case. Like, dude, what are you thinking? What are you doing? You know, don't look at them like that. Don't look at them like that. There's no hope for you. Looking with these little puppy dog eyes. Self-defense. Yeah, 48 seconds later. Is that it? Is that what they
We'll
showed?
address further today.
Wow.
No, Judge, thank you.
Thank you. Be here, be available at 8:30 if there's anything that comes up.
And then the sound goes off. Let's look at baby boy. Okay, yes. Don't worry, you get to go home early. Home, meaning jail, for a little nappy nap now. A nappity nap for him. Bye-bye. This guy makes me so angry, oh my word. There they go. That's the photographer. Okay, everyone. Wow. So that really was a short day, huh? How long were we live for? Let's see. Sure, defluffed and all. Less than 3 hours today. Tomorrow we'll be back for, I would assume, a full day. Right? And the judge said, wait, tomorrow's Wednesday. Full day. The state will very likely rest. They'll have a couple of things to sort out and closing arguments. Closing arguments, jury instructions, verdict watch. Can't wait. That sounds like it could even happen on Thursday. I think this case will be done by Friday. It sounds to me like the judge thinks so too. Okay? Right? Yeah, Phoebe says, don't worry, G. None of us can remain neutral. He made it very easy for all of us to see total guilt. I'm sure there's going to be at least one being like, Gisela, you are so biased. Yes, I am. To this baby boy. Oh my. Based on his own words. Those confessions. Oh my goodness, matching all the evidence. Wow. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone. I hope that you, as dark as the topic is, I hope that you enjoyed the trial day with me. I hope to see full justice for Emily. Yes. I'm going to put a link in the description box to a video that Grizzly Cat found of Emily singing. She did a cover called Read All About It by Imali Sand or Sunday, cover by Emily Schwartz. And this was in 2015, so she would have been a teenager, I think. I think she would have been about 15 years old. So I'm going to put that in the description box for you, as well as the live court feed. Thank you so much, Mods. Thank you, everyone. And I will see you again tomorrow for day 4 of this trial. Let's see how that goes. Stay safe, everyone. Bye.